Thank you. Let's give it another minute, couple of minutes for people to join. So good to see all of you here. Okay, can you hear me clearly? No? Deepak, can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. It looks like some people are saying that. Yeah. Okay. So we have most of the participants and already our time. Hello and welcome everybody. So we're 11:30, so we'll start. So first few minutes I'll spend about talking about what this program is all about, and then what we will cover in the next 6 weeks, and then we'll start the program and some meditation exercises. So first of all, I think something about me, I kind of started on my mindfulness journey long back, close to 20-25 years. So this is kind of a milestone where I've learned a lot from my teachers, and I'm indebted to them that I've learned from different traditions with different teachers. I'm doing my part now to kind of share whatever I've learned with others, and obviously, as I have learned from others, which is free of cost, I'm kind of sharing what I have learned with everybody. So this will be close to 6-week program. We'll meet every Sunday for 1 hour, and what we will be covering in each session, I'll just give you a quick brief. So there are several of the meditation and mindfulness techniques and contexts that we will cover in all 6 weeks. For example, in the first part of the program, the first 3 weeks, we'll primarily focus on what we call samatha meditation, which is meditation where we take some kind of object as our anchor and try to have train our mind towards that anchor. So we'll cover breath meditation, we'll cover body meditation, walking meditation, eating meditation, some of the techniques that are very common in our traditions, in Indic traditions. And the second part of the program, which is the last 3 weeks, we'll cover what we call the wisdom part of the whole meditative practice. So wisdom part of the meditative practice is about trying to understand, what is going on in our mind and develop our own understanding that is going beyond the tools, beyond the anchors that we take, as our clutches, and move to develop our own understanding. So we call in the meditative practices, they are called vipassana meditations. So samatha meditations are about trying to calm the mind and trying to make sure that we develop the skills to concentrate the mind. And wisdom meditations are meditations where we start to go beyond it and say, how can we develop wisdom in ourselves? How can we investigate and cultivate wisdom in ourselves? So the last 3, kind of Sundays, last 3 sessions, we'll try to cover what we call Vipassana meditation or wisdom meditation. And I'll give you a brief of those three, after we cover the first part. The program will be in two parts, part one and part two. So I think there are, a lot of people have already joined, and so just few more logistics about the program. We will have this program where I'll kind of create the context at the beginning of the session, and then we'll share some of the meditative practices with you as the session progresses. And I would request everybody to have whatever questions they have in their mind to put them in the chat pod. So I can regularly look at the chat pod and answer your questions. And in the end, last 15 minutes, we'll have an open Q&A session where I'll obviously try to answer whatever I can from the questions. And we will also have live questions at that time. The second is the WhatsApp group. Try to add you to all the WhatsApp group that I have created. Let's use that WhatsApp group for only the purpose of that it is meant for, which is the questions around mindfulness and meditations. I would, sincerely request everybody to keep the group sane and not add any forwards or other things which are not related to meditation. If somebody inadvertently forwards that, that's okay. But let's try to use the group only for the purpose that it is meant for. And so, anybody has any questions on the overall program and how it is structured, then I can answer that. You can either unmute yourself or put your question on the chat.
Yeah, hi Rajesh, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi,
This is
Pallavi.
Pallavi. So I could not join the WhatsApp group because I have a traditional phone. So is there any other way to deal with this?
I can forward you the information that I will forward on WhatsApp group to the email, if
Okay,
that works
thank
for
you
you.
so much.
Right. Okay. Okay. And again, I think if we would have been in a physical setting out of the corona, I think we would have all been sitting in a hall, so looking at each other. So please don't be shy. Try to switch on your cameras, know your peers, know your participants, and this also gives me an opportunity to talk to you directly. If you can, please do switch on your cameras so that it becomes an interactive and one-on-one session. Okay, so I saw the responses from all of you, and it seems like a lot of you really wanted to work on the wandering mind and work with your anxieties and work with the other factors that we all feel in our day-to-day life. We are all similar in the way the God has created us. So if we look at how I started doing the meditation, we should just share with you the journey and what kind of motivated me. uh, you know it's I was actually like every other boy, wanted to study in good college, get some good job, and get to earn some money and all that stuff, which by God's grace eventually I did. But even during early part of the my journey, I realized that there's something missing. Even if I'm getting whatever I wanted, which in many cases I did, it was not giving me the full satisfaction that I thought that would have given. So then I started to investigate, and luckily I got in touch with my professor in my college who introduced me to meditation, and I really hooked on to it. It was a lovely experience, and I went on to my journey and did the rest of this stuff. Got married, had kids, good job, but the journey of the meditation and the insights that it is giving me continue. So if we look at how we look at the our experiences of life, instinctively all of us are designed to reduce our suffering and go towards happiness. We want to increase our happiness, and we all want to reduce our suffering. That's what I have even got from the descriptions of the participants also. And rather than using the word suffering and happiness, I wanted to use an Indian word, which is, I will use that we all want to reduce dukkha and want to increase sukh. Right? Why? Because somehow the word suffering relates to something big. Suffering is something which is like trauma, huge anxiety or loss or something around that. But I think if we say dukkha, it encompasses a much broader sense of experiences. Dukh could be of small experiences like a background uneasiness going on in your mind, to a very big experience of a loss, or you know or loss of someone, or some big thing, or a big event happening in our life. So uh, that word, I think, encompasses a much broader feeling of our experiences. Similarly, the word sukha, if you say happiness, it generally turns out to be happiness of acquiring something, or happiness of getting something beautiful. But if we say sukha, it is a much broader sense of well-being. When we go and go to an elder person and give him or her respect, they say in Hindi, sukhi raho. When they say sukhi raho, I don't think they mean that you go and get a lot of money, or you get a good job, or they just give you a wish of a well-being. you know Go and be well. There's a sense of giving of well-being. So that is, I generally like the word using sukha and dukha rather than happiness and suffering, because they're much broader in our sense. So as I said, when I met my teacher, and he started to give me because I'm from a science background, he was from a science teacher, so we were all very scientific. So when we start, but he's very ground to earth, and he started to talk about, are we getting happier, or are we getting sukhi as we age? And if you look at how much, for example, the different things that we go towards that help us get sukh. First thing that comes to our mind is money. If we get a lot of money, we'll be sukhi, or we'll be happy. But as we get money, are we becoming happier? At least I didn't. I got, by grace of God, a lot of money, but I didn't get a sense of कि बहुत सुखी हो गए, और well-being बहुत बढ़ गई. And there is a lot of research also that has gone into the Western world, where they've clearly indicated that with increases money, you don't get a lot of sukh or happiness. But on the other hand, people say, if that is the true, then should we stop earning money, or should we stop going behind the conveniences of life or stuff like that? And if you look at the other end of the spectrum, those people who said that no, I don't want money, I don't want anything, are they sukhi, right? Or people who are actually poor, are they sukhi? And that is also not true. If the research also shows that countries or people who are not earning enough uh, are are not happier, just because we believe that the money doesn't cannot buy us happiness. Similarly, the lack of money is also true, that it doesn't give us happiness. So it is clearly, there is something clearly was missing. And the discussion went on to the other things of life. When we get other comforts of life, when we get uh, you know uh, good ranks in our jobs, or titles, or we cross milestones. When I was a child, every child, like any other child, you always believe that when I get into a big school, from a small primary school to a big school, you're looking forward to that. I'll be happy. you know or when I go from a school to a college, I'll be happy. You talk to kids, and they say that the biggest moment of my life would be when I go to college. And you talk to youngsters, they'll say biggest moment of my life would be when I get married and have a beautiful life partner. And the milestones keep on going, that you have kids and you have this. But if we look at ourselves, and we look at talk to other people, has it brought us all the kind of well-being and sukh that we were expecting from it? The answer is generally no. I think we're not becoming happier as we get all these milestones in life, or as we age. But on the other hand, people were not got it, people who didn't get married, or people who, for example, didn't get the kind of jobs they wanted, or didn't get the things that they wanted, they are also not happy. So there's something missing, something really missing. As we get money, we don't get happier, right? And the poor people are not happy. If we get milestones, we don't get happier, and then the people who don't cross that milestone not happy. As the technology grows, we've seen in the society, technology has given us so much, science and medicine and everything. Hasn't given us the kind of happiness or sukh that we were asking science to give us. If you look at US, 50% of the US adult population is on some kind of a medicine, regular medicine. And surprisingly, 35% of that uh, are on medicines, psychological medicines, because they're stressed, they have their anxiety, they have tension. It is a huge number. India is doing much better around that. But it's clearly that the science that the kind of thing that it started to go for is not giving us things that it was meant for. So then I still remember, my teacher saying to me a very beautiful quote that I just wanted to give you guys. He said that if you believe you can optimize your life or rearrange your life, right? And you believe that you can eliminate dukkha, go ahead and try it, right? Go ahead and try it, it will not happen. So, what is going wrong? That is what the question that we were discussing. And being some students of modern science, it was clearly, one thing was clearly coming out as that if we are instinctively going towards happiness and we are trying all of these things which are not giving us happiness, one thing was absolutely clear, that we don't know what will give us dukkha. Because if we knew clearly, we would not have gone towards it. And also, we don't know what will give us sukha. Because if we knew, we would have gone towards it. It is pretty clear that in common normal understanding, we miss the point. We don't have the clear understanding of what is the real cause of well-being and real cause of anxiety and suffering. Because agar हमें पता होता, if we knew, we would never have gone towards that. Right? So it was pretty clear that in our discussions, because of the scientific discussion, that the problem is not in our efforts as a society, as a person. The problem is our understanding. But the second thing also came up, which is we know a lot of things that can make us happy, right? But we can't do it. Why can't we do it? Because it seems that our instinctive response doesn't allow us or doesn't help us move towards that. I call it the WhatsApp gyan. There is so much of gyan going on in WhatsApp. If you do this, you will be happier. If you do this, you will be happier. Many things we believe in, but we can't do them. The reason is simple. I think we don't have sufficient control of our own minds, that we can't do them. And so the two things that clearly came up in our discussion was that first is that we don't really understand the true cause of suffering and true cause of well-being. Not the apparent one. The apparent one we have all tried. We have all tried apparent ones. Let's get money, let's get this, let's get that, it will make us happy. Apparent one is clearly not making us happy. Similarly, the cause of dukkha also, apparent ones are very clear. If that guy caused me dukkha, my boss caused me dukkha, that relationship is called me dukkha. And maybe not getting what I wanted in life is causing me dukkha. These are all apparent ones. But they, as I said, people who don't have that are not also, any happier. So the problem is that we don't know the real cause of sukha, and we don't know the real cause of dukkha. And on top of it, whatever we know, there is several things that we still know. We can't apply it to ourselves. We can't make it our internalized knowledge because we don't have that control of our mind. Yeah, this is like New Year resolutions. You say, I will, start to, in this New Year, I'll start to do this. Why? Because you believe that is the right thing. But within few days or a week, you're out of that because we don't have sufficient control of our minds. So I think why I try to tell you that about was that these are the two big parts of the overall learning that and the journey that we cover in this whole course. The first part, which is the samatha meditation, will all be focused on the allowing ourselves to get hold of our mind, to skill our mind, to make it concentrated enough to so that we get control of our mind and do what we know is right. There are several things that we know is right, but we can't do it because there's no enough self-control within ourselves because we have not trained our mind. That we have, the society, generally is moving towards do whatever you like at whatever time, at whatever convenience. There is we have not, our sense of discipline and control has completely gone down. In Indian society, we used to have a lot of self-discipline and control, but unfortunately, because of the different, way the whole world society has moved, we have kind of lost that. So whatever small understanding we have, we can't even apply to ourselves because we can't control what our minds itself, and mind takes us for a journey, takes us for a ride. And as I see, and it was true for myself also, and I was, this mind keeps wandering so much, and it will take you instinctively to things that you don't, that they are not right, but you still do it, whether it is small addictions or food addictions or anything, or to things that we believe are not inherently good for us, because we can't apply that learning and internalize them for ourselves. So the first part of the program would be to give us the skills so that we can calm our and give us the skills to control our minds and control our thoughts. That is what samatha meditation is all part of. The second part of the course, which is vipassana meditation, will help us understand what are the real causes of the well-being and the real causes of anxiety and dukkha, not the apparent ones. Apparent ones we all know. And as I said, apparent one we all have tried. We have, I think, all grown up to the point where we've tried most of the apparent things that we believe will help us in our well-being and we believe will help us reduce our anxiety, and they have not worked. If somebody believes that there are still things that they can try the apparent causes, as my teacher said, go ahead and try it. Once you realize that they're not working, then let's come down and work to find out what are the real ones. And that is what most of the Indic traditions in our country, went into and saying what are the real causes. If these are called vipassana meditations or uh, which are reflective meditations. We try to reflect within our mind, what is causing, well-being, what is causing dukkha, and going deeper and deeper and finding the real true cause and work on that. It cannot come from a simple understanding. Not even, for example, when I'm, talking. If you read something, you hear me talk or hear anybody talk, the intellectual understanding cannot give you that vipassana. The reason is very clear. The intellectual understanding is only remains at the level of the mind, and how we operate are from our instinctive understanding. If somebody says something bad, we just have anger because it's instinctive. It's not intellectual. We understand anger is not good, but instinctively we respond. So how do we work on that instinctive part of the mind, not the intellectual part of the mind, but instinctive part of the mind, where it learns itself what are the true causes and starts to improve. That would be the second part of the program. Uh, so let's let's maybe uh, try out some part of the meditation that I said that we will try few practices in this the first three sessions, which are towards concentration or samatha part of the meditations. For that, uh, just a couple of things we need to realize. What is mindfulness meditation? It's just a small definition, and then we'll get into that. So the mindfulness meditation is very simple. I think things needs to be very simple enough for us to really grasp that. It's just being in the present and being aware of what is in the present and being non-judgmental towards. So there are two parts to it. One being in the present, and the second being non-judgmental of what is it that we are seeing or experiencing in the present. Now, in the first part, it's best explained. Being in the present, people say, what does being in the present mean? I think being the present being is very simple. Things are explained in a much or what do you say, negations are much better explained. Being not lost. We are all lost in our minds. If you look at our mind, we are constantly thinking of the past, constantly thinking of the future. We have anxieties of the past. We have plans for the future. We worry about this, we worry about that. And then there is a moment where we say, oh, I was lost. That moment is the moment which is the present moment, when you are not lost. The moments where you completely making a story in your mind, where you're constantly thinking, worrying, having perceptions of the past, future, or the things that concern you, are the moments which I call we are in a trance. We are in a trance. The mind is taking us for a ride. We are not available to act because the mind is taking us over. And then there's suddenly a moment. Oh, I was lost. Why did I do this? No. Even in the heat of anger, you will realize that, oh my God, after 10 minutes, oh, why am I so angry? That moment is the moment of not being lost, is the moment of awakening at that time. So mindfulness meditation says that that moment is available to all of us. We just have not practiced enough or have not trained our mind enough so that we can be available and use our wisdom, whatever wisdom we have. As I said, we all know what is right and wrong, but you can apply the right and wrong wisdom only when you are available. When you are lost, you cannot apply your own understanding because the instinctive mind has taken you over. So mindfulness meditation says, can we train our minds to be not lost more often, to be awake more often, so that we are available. When we are available, we can use our wisdom to do what is right and what is wrong. So that is the first part of the mindfulness definition, which is not being lost, not being lost in the stories of mind or trance of mind. And the second part is to, when we are not lost, it means then we know what is happening around us. Can we be non-judgmental towards it? That is the second part of the meditation, which is much more difficult, but is lot more beneficial also. And the second part we'll do in the focus on the second part of the course also. So in this next exercise, what we will try to do is try to cultivate this simple skill of being awake, being available, and not being lost. Right now, if we try to do that on our own without any help, you will see that you will get back to this mind starting to think about again and again, and you will go back uh, uh, to the thinking process. Right? So we need some anchor. We need something for the mind to hold on, so that mind can hold on to that, and we know that we are holding on to that, and we are not lost. Right? So there are several anchors. We say that there are several things that you can, or tasks that you can give your mind to hold on to, so that it remains in the present moment and not gets lost in the same thoughts of past and future and all that stuff. So we will use different anchors in different meditative techniques. Today we will start to uh, learn the skill of just watching our breath. Right? Watching a breath in itself is not the kind of is not the goal. This is what the goal is, not to make sure that we become breath watchers. Right? You can't, there's nothing much you will achieve when you watch the breath. The goal is to be in the present, because when we in the present, we are available and we will act in much more wise manner. But to be in the present, mind needs some anchors. We will believe breath as an anchor. And there are several other anchors that are very famous in some Eastern traditions, like walking meditation, eating meditation, and we'll learn them in next few classes. So now I'll invite all of you to close your eyes, sit in a comfortable position, whatever position is comfortable to you, you can sit in that. This kind of a meditation exercise is not an exercise of torturing our body or mind. We want to learn to relax the mind and want to give it a very simple thing to do, which is watch our breath. So it is very important that we sit in a posture which is comfortable to us. If you want to sit cross-legged, you can sit cross-legged. If you cannot, do not try to torture or strain your body, just sit comfortably in a chair or whatever, wherever you can sit comfortably. The only thing to realize, to note or cautious about is that when we want to relax our minds, we don't want the mind to become dull, because most of the time the relaxation will lead to sleepiness or dullness. Therefore, the only thing to note is that we should keep our back as much straight as possible. Try to sit comfortably with your back straight and back and neck straight. You can think of this as the the whole spinal cord is a hanger, or a hanger kind of a thing, which is straight, and the rest of the body is hanging from it. Just try to relax your body on a straight spine. Now try to observe or find what part of the body is still strained, still has tension in it, still has contraction in it. I have found many times when we bring our attention to our face or our forehead, we find a lot of strain in the face or forehead. Just relax. Just relax the strain in our face, forehead, jaws. Just relax your shoulders, your chest, your belly, or anywhere else where you find that your body is still having some kind of a tension, strain, or stiffness. I have found this myself and with so many fellow meditators that I know. Even after so much of practice, when I sit down and bring my attention to my face and forehead, I invariably find how strained it was. And it amazes me how much strain and stiffness and tension I was carrying in my body all day long without even realizing. And the simple act of just realizing the stiffness, strain, and releasing it is so calming, so amazing. Now that you have relaxed your body, just try to bring your attention to your breath. Any part of the body that you can notice which is breathing. Some people, they recognize their breathing by bringing attention to their belly. Some people recognize it by bringing attention to their chest. And some people even recognize breathing by bringing attention to the air flow going inside the nostrils and mouth. However, you can recognize it, just bring your attention to your breath. Ask yourself a question. Am I breathing? Your attention will go to the answer. The answer should be in your experience. Yes, I can feel my breath. You don't need to do anything special with your breath, like making it fast, deep, slow. The goal is to come to present the way it is, the way the body is breathing naturally. you may find that the mind wanders. It will wander to something else other than the breath. That's okay. That's what minds are supposed to do. We are all human, and that's what human mind will do. But we also have the capacity of awareness, of recognizing that the mind has wandered away and bringing it back. Every time mind wanders away, very gently, very softly, without any judgment, bring it back to the present moment. And the present moment we are breathing. So we can ask the mind to be aware of the breath. When the mind wanders away and you bring it back, be kind to it. Be soft in your heart and be kind to your mind. It is what it is trained to do. It is what it's supposed to do. And it is doing that. Look how we have all forgotten to be kind to others and to our own mind. The best analogy I have heard is to treat your mind and look at your mind like a mother looks at a newborn baby. When the baby cries, you're not angry with it. You're not frustrated with it. You're kind to it, even though the baby is crying. With the same attitude, bring the mind back to the present moment on your breath. When you're feeling relaxation in the body and the mind, it's natural, feel sleepy or dull. If you notice that, straighten up your back. The goal is to be alert, awake in the present. Breathing in, breathing out. But awake. If you find yourself getting tense, you can again look at the parts of the body which have become tense, like your face, forehead, your jaws, chest, belly. Just relax them. As I said, we have forgotten some of these skills. The skill of relaxation. As soon as we get awake, can we relax ourselves? You can slowly open your eyes. Okay, you can slowly open your eyes and come back because we have 10 minutes left. I wanted an opportunity for everyone to ask any questions. I think the best way on this online world is to type your question on chat or raise your virtual hand so that we can take questions one by one. Yeah, Nidhi, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hello, sir. Nidhi here. So basically, my question is that in between, like after 15-20 minutes, I could not concentrate at all. So I,
15-20 minutes into the session or in the
I
meditation?
was trying for first 15-20 minutes. There were a few moments I felt, but then I just could not sit with my eyes closed. So I just opened them.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I mean, my mind was totally wandering everywhere. And since we are not used to sitting for so long, so then one part of my back also started kind of hurting.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's what
So
I.
yeah, I think as I said, that mind will wander. I think if you get worried about it, why is the mind wandering? Then you will stop trying to bring it back. So I think the best mechanism is to kind of accept that the mind will wander. The the goal is not a pure concentration kind of a goal. The goal is increase the moments when we become aware that the mind has wandered. For example, in this you yourself said that the mind had wandered. There was a moment that you realized that mind had wandered. Right? That is the moment of sati in what we call sati in the modern tradition. That is the moment of mindfulness. The moment when you realize, because when the mind was wandering, you were not aware that mind was wandering. Only when you were aware, oh my God, my mind wandered. That is the moment. It's a precious moment. It is a gem. Those are the moments we want to increase in our life, and through meditation practices we want to increase, even if the moment happens say once in the 15-minute sitting. It's a precious moment. Treat it like a diamond. If it happens once, good. Maybe next sitting it will happen 2 times, next sitting it will happen 3 times, 5 times, 10 times. That is the skill that we are giving by practicing formally in a sitting session, that every time I come back, I say, wow, this is a gem. This is a gem. I came back. I was not lost. Now I came back.
But it gave me restlessness after a point. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
So you'll have to basically uh, we'll learn in the next few sessions where the restlessness is a state of mind that you can even watch and let it be there. That itself is a meditative exercise. So whatever you can do uh, easily, do start with that. If it is 5 minutes, start with 5 minutes. If it is 10 minutes, start with 10 minutes. Whatever you believe you can do easily, start with that. But don't get worried about the distractions of the mind. Mind will wander. That's what all of our minds do. So if you don't worry about it, we should just say that okay, it wanders. Let me get back. If it gives you too much of restlessness, you can get up and say next time I'll try longer sitting.
Thank you.
Yeah, Pallavi, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, hi Rajesh. So my question is a general one. So it's not really related to today's session. It's general that I have been practicing meditation since some time, and I have a feeling that meditation has dulled my intellect. Is it true?
Why do you feel that? What makes you believe that?
Because I used to do a lot of intellectual work and I don't feel like doing it, or when I do it, I'm not as good at it as I was before, and my analytical skills are coming down. So, but all this is required in life. All these skills
Absolutely.
are
And
required
what
in life.
kind of a meditation were you doing?
So, I'm doing Goenka Ji's Vipassana.
Right. By the way, I've done that, so I have a lot of respect for Goenka and his tradition. Uh,
Yeah.
I think if meditation done right will make our mind much more bright and much more alive, right? I I think if anything we do in life that makes us dull, we should reevaluate whether we should be doing that or not, or maybe we're doing it in a wrong manner.
I couldn't hear the last point. You said that if anything makes us dull, we should reevaluate what we're doing.
Yes, I think the whole goal of human existence is to be alive, be happy, be active, right? And in a state of well-being, खुशी सुख मिलना चाहिए जैसे मैंने कहा ना. So that is what the eventually goal is. If not moving towards that, you should reevaluate what you're doing, or look at whether you're doing it right or not, right? Because all meditations, if they're done right, will make us more awake, will make us more bright. I don't think it will make us dull. It will definitely have an impact on the mind which is bringing toxic states. If you believe that remaining always under anxiety, constant worry is an active mind, then rather be quietened down, right? Because those are toxic states of mind which are not only affecting the rest of the well-being, but is also affecting physical well-being. Just as mental well-being, it is affecting physical well-being. There are tons of research which says that the toxic states of mind have huge impact on both mental and physical well-being. So there's definitely quietening of the toxic states of mind, but it should lead to brightening up the beautiful states of mind. And intellectual capabilities and analytical capabilities are part of that. I'm a science student. I'm working in a company, and I believe how important it is. Because if we lose our intellectual capabilities, we lose the capabilities to evaluate ourselves whether we're going in the right path or not. So
Yeah.
I would suggest that if this is where it is leading, you should contact somebody, whether you're doing it right or not. But mindfulness and meditation done right gives you beautiful results and will not dull your mind at all.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think there was a question that felt very sleepy, had to make conscious effort to stay awake. Is it normal? Yes, it is. See, because the only way we know how to quieten our mind is to go to sleep. I don't think it's such a ironical thing that we have, as I said, we have forgotten the art of relaxation. The only time we can relax our mind is to shut it down and go to sleep, right? So that's a basic instinct that as soon as the mind starts to quieten up, our instinctively we believe it's time to sleep. So it's a good sign, but it is also a sign of the fact that in addition to relaxation, we need to learn how to relax in an awakened state, right? The only way to relax is not to go to sleep, right? But that's actually, we find difficulty in going to sleep also, because we have even lost that capability that you can go to bed and just relax your mind and go to sleep. Even that capability is kind of diminishing. Forget about relaxing in an awakened mode, right? So it's as I said, it is natural, it happens to almost everybody, but it's also a sign that start to remind yourself to be awake also. And one of the things that, as I mentioned in the instructions, is to, as soon as you see yourself that you're getting sleepy or dull, try to straighten up your back, right? That will make you more of. If that also doesn't help, third, open your eyes, look at some light. For example, if there's a tube light or a bulb or a window where light is coming, keep your eyes open, look at that light, and meditate with the eyes closed. It's not that we can't be aware of the present moment with our eyes open. We can only be aware of the present moment with our eyes closed. That's not true. By the sixth session, we will learn to be awake every moment of our life, how to do daily work, how to go to our jobs, do our businesses, do the daily chores, and still be awake. So if you feel dullness, either straighten up your back and open your eyes, look at something bright, and keep meditating. That will help. But in the beginning, to uh, to help us reduce the distractions, we generally ask people to close their eyes, because the eyes open, there are more chances of getting distracted. But if dullness happens, try that. It works, at least for me. Yeah. Pooja, I think you had a question. Can you unmute yourself and
Thanks,
ask?
Rajesh. Am I
Yeah.
audible?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to know, to bring this into practice, should we do this daily? And is there any specific time of the day when we should do it to bring more focus? Like we are meeting next Sunday now. So in
Yes.
between, what do you recommend? And like,
Yes.
is there any audio which can help? Because like you were speaking in between, which helps me bring back the focus. So is there any audio which can support during this?
Sure. Sure. First of all, I actually forgot to mention there will be homework, right? And this is the homework, right? I don't think anyone can learn any deep skill by just spending 1 hour in a week. So I would request all of you to do the homework for the rest of the week, which would be what we just mentioned. That uh, and so, because that's already the time, I'll try to mention it. What is the homework? Homework is, please try to do at least 15 to 30 minutes of mindfulness meditation every day. Right? That is the minimum that you can start with. Right? The minimum that you can start with. Uh, as I said, there is no good time to be in the present moment. Every time is a good time to be in the present moment. So whatever time suits you, try to do that. But it should be a time where you can dedicate yourself, your own development, for 15 to 30 minutes. Right? In general, it is said that morning time is, and the evening times are better. Morning times are like early morning when you're woken up and freshened up. That is generally the fact. Mind is pretty bright at that time. It is not carrying the burden of the last days in anxiety at that time. And the time of close to sunset, when you've kind of done your day, that is a time where it helps to relax the all days of anxiety and quieten your mind. So those are the two times that you can meditate. In any case, this is a very formal way of meditating. As I said, the idea is to develop a skill where we can be available, we can be awake during the day and make the right decisions. This is just a time for you to sit down and train your mind so that you can carry it forward for the rest of the day also. And so I think that is what I would recommend, that please spend at least 15 to 30 minutes every day for the next week. Next week we will learn another uh, mindfulness tool. This was a tool of breath. We will learn another tool, and slowly we will learn tools which will integrate our lives with it. We don't need to really have a formal way of sitting, and that is the only way, only time to be mindful. We'll have gone to integrate this into our life.
Rajesh, Pallavi again. Can I ask another question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, my question is like, so I'm doing Goenkaji's Vipassana. So with that also, should I do the one that you have told us today, like looking at the breath?
Yes, I think Goenkaji's Vipassana tells you to do Anapanasati. So just do
Yeah, yeah,
Anapanasati. Yeah, but just be. I just say be conscious of the fact that don't make it a goal to watch the breath. The goal is to be awake, aware,
Okay.
right? Because what I have found in myself and in many practitioners of Goenkaji's tradition, that we make it another goal to strive for, like any worldly goal that we strive for. I want to have this, I want to have new car, I want to have longer durations of anapana, I want to have longer durations of adhitthana, I want to do 20-day camp and 30-day camp. They becomes milestones, right?
Yeah.
Like any other milestones. Don't be aware of that pitfall.
Mhm.
What I have learned, right, in my own practice, because I've done Goenkaji's traditions, and I'm also learned a lot from our other Indic traditions and Vedantic traditions, Thai forest tradition, which I'm currently very deeply engaged with. All of them, the essential part is the same. We just have to be aware of the pitfalls. The essence of all of that is to be awake, to be in the present moment. But if you attach it with other things, like I want to do 20-day shivir, 30-day shivir, longer adhisthanas, you're turned into another spiritual, quest, spiritual ladder that you want to ride, which will take you away from the present.
Yeah, that's fine. So like those are not my goals. I don't see myself doing a
Because
20 day.
yeah, because I've seen that with many people, so just wanted to caution that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I don't know if I can do that. But my only question is, so every day, like, I do my anapana or whatever. So like these days, there's a lot of stress. So I was doing anapana. Then then finally I told myself enough is enough. And so yesterday I did my vipassana, and today also, and it was fine. And I was able to do it. So now I'll be seeing you next week. So during this 1 week, shall I do the anapana, vipassana, or is it my choice? I can choose, right?
It's your choice. You can choose. If you just have to dedicate 15 to 30 minutes to be awake,
Okay,
to
sure.
not be lost. That I said. Like if you're not lost, you're in the present moment. Do
Yeah,
whatever you can to be in the present.
yeah, it keeps coming. So like my mind keeps wandering, but then I tell myself, oh, it's wandered. So it keeps coming back. So thank you.
See, the breath, anapana, and the sensations are all tools that we use to bring our mind to the present. You can use anything.
Okay,
If,
thank you.
if there are other tools that are more suitable, you can use those also.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, Abhijit, you want to unmute?
Yeah, hi. So my question is that while I was meditating and I was keeping my attention on the breath, what was happening is behind the back, just like for example, when we are driving, our eyes are on the front road, but we can still see what is happening side on the sides. So in a similar way, when I was meditating, the thoughts were just popping up from behind the somewhere from inside the mind, and lot of memories, something else, some happy, some. So although my attention was on the breath, but still those thoughts were coming. So how can I reduce those thoughts?
Uh, so first of all, I think you should, applaud yourself that you could notice that along with your breath, right? So the attention part, the awareness part in was able to keep your attention to breath also, and also notice other thoughts that are coming. So first, I think we need to understand that the mind is doing what it is supposed to do. Like eyes will see. If the eyes are open, it will see. If the ears are open, they'll hear. If the mind is not sleeping, it will think. It's just nature. It's in Hindi we say nasargic, calm hai. You can't say that my ears are open, but I don't want to hear. If you're awake, then you will think, right? The goal is to increase our ability to come to the present moment. When you are noticing that in the present moment your mind was roaming around, it's a beautiful moment. You're aware of what your mind is doing, and that is what our goal is. Because if we are aware of what our minds are doing throughout the day, our chances of doing mistakes are so less. We will not make mistakes uh, because we were lost or we were in the trance of the mind, right? So it's actually a good thing to remain aware of what is happening in the rest of the body also. Senior meditators are asked to be aware of everything that is happening in the body, whether it is breath, whether there are sensations in the body, whether there are thoughts going on in the mind. If there is a sound that is coming, you can be aware of that also. If there is a smell that is in the room, you can be aware of that also. The beauty is the more we are aware, the better it is for us.
Okay.
Mind will think, don't worry about that. Don't try to shut your mind, because it will not. Go ahead and try it. It will not.
So
It may calm down for some time, but it will not.
So I've been meditating since like I can say 4 or 5 months now. So what I've observed is that while keeping the attention on the breath, you can hear your heartbeat, you can hear some kind of vibration, some veins. So some kind of things is happening, and then there is a tinkling sensation on the top of the head, something like that in the forehead. Those kind of things were happening. So I just wanted to know that. And my another question is that it is similar to the previous question, but in my case, what happened is due to overwork since the last one whole year, since the lockdown started, and spending more than 16, 17 hours in front of electronic mobile and laptop and all those things. Everything is on the mobile now, entertainment, work.
Yeah.
So because of that, I am losing my logical thinking and analytical thinking. So because of exhaustion and stress. So my doctor suggested me that you do mindfulness, and thankfully I enrolled for this and some other courses also. But am I going too fast to get any kind of a satisfaction, or am I going too fast to solve this problem?
No, I think I won't say you're going too fast, and I won't say it's just your story. It is the story of all of us in varying degrees, and the pandemic has just made it worse for so many of us. And but it's also an opportunity for us to say, to look deeply and say, as I said, why is this happening, right? So when you say that your mind is going dull, and the only thing that comes to my mind is that mind becomes dull and loses its capabilities, right? Whether it is analytical or any other capability, because it is exhausted by the time it has spent on toxic mental states, right? On anger, on anxiety, on worry, on so many other things. It is extremely tired of doing all of that, and that is why it seems dull. Because thak gaya hai, right? As we say.
Yeah.
If you ask him to do so many things which are toxic, right? Think about what will have happened to the mind. So the only way to come out of is to make sure that we are aware and we stop the toxicity of the mind. We can stop the toxicity of the mind only when we become aware. When we are not aware, we can't stop it. It is doing what it is doing. So I think a lot of us are feeling these situations, and in an exaggerated manner in the pandemic, because the toxic mental states have occupied our mind, especially in the solitude. So I would suggest that spend more time on the relaxation exercises, especially the samta part that as I said in the first three sessions, where
Right.
that is the best part, because when there is an emergency, right, you don't go and exercise. Right? For example, if you're having a heart attack, you don't go and exercise. You first treat it, and then you say, now you have treated your heart attack, please go and do a good exercises so that you can avoid it in future. So when there is an emergency, the mind has become so dull and been so occupied with toxic mental state. The best thing is to quieten it up, do some samta meditations, mindfulness of breath, mindfulness sensations, mindfulness of this relaxation. As I said, we've forgotten to relax ourselves. This is such a,
Yeah.
we've forgotten to relax ourselves. So do some relaxation exercises. Once you find the mind has come to a much more sane state, then start to do what we call strengthening exercises. Right? Start to do vipassana kind of thing, reflection exercises. Why is this happening? How can I reflect on my own dukkha and say, what is the root cause of that? It's not the pandemic, I'm telling you. That seems the apparent cause. That's not true. Like any other thing in life, the apparent causes are not the causes that are, that are the roots of the toxic mental states. It's what is our instinctive response to them, and that's what we have to learn to work on them. It is very difficult to learn them through words, talks, and literature, right? Because they are instinctive skills. It's like swimming. You can't learn swimming by reading about swimming. You can't learn swimming by listening to 10 talks about swimming. You have to do it yourself. You have to look at inside your mind. You have to investigate it every time that it feels suffering, and you have to slowly and slowly change the instinctive response of your mind to not generate toxic states. So that is the second part, which is the vipassana part, and that is the most difficult and most rewarding part also.
Okay.
First part is to learn to do some samatha and calming meditations.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other question? Because we are out of time also. So I'll say that for the people who are still there are 3 homeworks. One is to do 15 to 30 minutes of formal meditation exercise every day, and we will start to slowly and slowly get into the vipassana part also. So I want you to do some part of that every time you become awake, right? Can you recognize that moment that I was lost and now I'm awake? Very simple part. The reason is that we want to recognize what is being lost and what is being awake, right? The difference between them, right? In the Buddhist tradition, this is called sati, right? The sati is the part when we remind ourselves, oh, I was thinking that. Can we just recognize moments of sati in our day? Just try to have that intention that I'll try to recognize the moments of sati in our day, in my day. And the third exercise is, in that moment when there is you become awake, oh, I was lost, or oh, I was angry, oh my God, I was worrying. That's a moment of sati. You can see yourself doing that. Try to find out what is the apparent cause of dukkha and what is the real, right? And we will discuss it in the next Sunday. Okay.
When you say dukkha, it means why my mind wandered.
Why am I feeling dukkha?
No, but if I've come back to a realization, then you said to understand what was the cause for dukkha.
For example, if you for most of us, we will come back to this, especially in the beginning, when we are suffering, when there's dukkha. Oh my God, I am anxious. Oh my God, I was lost. Oh my God, I was angry. Oh my God, I was worrying. Oh my God, this. Oh my God. Those are the moments when you have sati, right? I was worried. You don't get sati in the initial stages when you are enjoying, right? You don't get sati. You don't get, yes, I was enjoying a lot. You get it much later. So good question. If let me then change it. Whenever you have sati and you find that you were in dukkha, find the apparent cause of dukkha. And when you have sati and you find that you were enjoying it, you were having well-being and sukha in your mind, find out what is the apparent cause of sukha. In that moment, when you have that sati, when you get a reminder, you will find that your mind was either anxious or was happy. Right? Find out what was the true cause of that, not the apparent.
Okay, we'll try.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank
We'll
you.
meet next Sunday. Thank you.